There's a big consensus and commitment that we cannot wait for the perfect conditions to start rebuilding and investing in social protection building blocks. The examples from the financial sector have really stood out to me. For example, the emergence, even in very difficult circumstances, of and growth of a digital payment system in Gaza that allows delivery, even in these, just very challenging circumstances, shows that things can be built and invested in and deliver results today. The other example of investments in a shared delivery system in Sudan shows that there are opportunities to invest in things that can be social protection building blocks that can deliver results and offer efficiency for the type of programming that's happening today, but linked to a larger vision of how do we, something that can be locally owned and transition into a more robust social protection system over time. So just the opportunities around focusing on the delivery and on the payment side of things really opens up kind of a window to think about what's the longer term roadmap here.
Some governments and national legal frameworks allow for forcibly displaced people to access social protection, yet we observe many barriers, more procedural, administrative, and practical barriers to inclusion, such as lack of documentation, lack of awareness, discrimination, and language. And therefore, there is a need to work collectively to address these barriers. And we discussed with many of the authors the idea of having a community of practice and a platform following the conference where we can keep the discussion alive and ideally also start addressing collectively these barriers and supporting governments in doing so. There will be, I think, two important policy events and avenues where we can bring this to the agenda of governments. One is the high-level panel on social protection in conflict and fragile settings, which will conclude by the end of the year. And the second one will be the Global Refugee Forum Progress Review taking place in December.
It's important for us to think about internally displaced populations as the responsibility of a state, and that we as planners, as policymakers, could perhaps think about internally displaced populations as population that we need to plan for and guide their spatial integration within different parts of a country, whether peripheral cities or urban. It's important to think of IDPs as the responsibility of the state so that we can actually plan for them the same way we plan for our local populations.
Let's focus on taking a systematic approach in the dialogue between social protection and humanitarian assistance. There are clear opportunities to work together, but we need to approach it from a more systematic point of view and with some level of clarity about what we want to achieve going forward in terms of linking social protection to humanitarian assistance.
One of my main takeaways is that incentives drive a lot of the behavior that we're seeing kind of within the agencies and the governments that are working in these countries. And if we don't work on the side of the incentives, we're not going to go very far. And in fact, we had a really interesting statement around the fact that when we look at the spectrum, it's not just going from conflict blind all the way to the focusing on peace building. We're very often conflict blindfolded intentionally because we don't want to be looking at the risk. We're kind of risk averse because we're scared of the consequences in these settings. There's many small little micro adaptations that we can be making to be able to work in these contexts. And there's actually kind of a huge amount of learning that different actors have had in different countries. If we're able to reap those and start to think about those systematically and work together across agencies rather than each of us in our own silos and work across sectors, that will make a big difference.
There's actually the opportunity that's presented by the rules of donor organisations. There's been this perception, this narrative for many years that a lot of donors aren't able to channel funds through national social protection systems. And there have been all these commitments, national commitments, international commitments, pledges. We're going to, work with national systems. We're going to increase the amount of, funds that we channel through national systems. We're going to work with national actors. But some donors have said, or some officials working with some donors have said, no, they're not able to do it. We just can't do that. We're not allowed to. There's some research presented at the conference showing that actually donors are able to do this, that the rules do allow it. Now, maybe the rules aren't very well known. Maybe not everyone in these organizations is aware of the rules or aware of how to navigate that bureaucracy to make it happen. I think there's a great opportunity in the future, looking forward, especially in challenging times for many contexts around the world, and with donors wanting to use their aid more efficiently, more effectively. Understanding how the bureaucracy works, a great opportunity there for them to be able to make that happen.
I think a key takeaway for me was that it's just so brilliant to get people together in the same room, and we've all been looking and struggling and really focusing on these issues and trying to find the best way to advocate, to influence change. And so it's been really great to be able to be together in that room, feel that energy, and know that we together can achieve a lot more.